Yo, what's up everyone? Rage Cage 20 here, back with some more Mr. B, Mr. Ballen. Doing two today because it's been a little bit since I've seen Mr. B, and I feel like two stories would be a good way to go today. Today we have the insane true story of Cocaine Bear. Kind of heading up because some of these I really want to investigate. Cause some of them look really cool before we maybe start heading back down again. I've heard people I work with reference Cocaine Bear. I feel like it's something that's happened recently-ish, or at least the story's been shared a lot recently. Because I don't think they know who Mr. Ballen is or watch Mr. Ballen stuff, but you never know, they might. But I don't know what Cocaine Bear is or was. I imagine, just purely based off of the story, that some kind of performing bear, whether it be a circus or some kind of television show, whatever, they would just like throw cocaine in its face and whatnot and let the magic happen. Sounds pretty fucked up, but I mean, there's really no but to that. It sounds fucked up, but does sound like I guess there is a but it does sound like what would be for a very interesting story, since it's already happened. Probably shouldn't have happened, shouldn't let it happen, but that does sound insane, and apparently it happened, so that makes it true. What I forgot to say in the last one, the hospital from Hill, still so distracted by the fact that he keeps changing his thumbnails and titles and whatnot, is that I was a little disappointed with the Catherine Knight story. Because with that being a story that I've researched a lot and I'm very intimately familiar with, he left out a lot of details and a lot of information. So that got me thinking, like, how many details and like other stuff has he left out of these other stories? Was there a lot of like that really should have been in there, like I thought with Catherine, that Mr. Ballen leaves out of these stories? I don't know. Very interested, because all of these, like, I've never heard like any of these stories before. So, I don't know. He could be leaving out 25-50% of the information. I wouldn't even know. You know, I don't know, but hopefully not. Hopefully he's getting like the full story of everything, or you know, leaving out little bits maybe here and there, like getting like the general stories of it all. Hopefully Mr. Ballen's doing a good job. I've enjoyed the stories anyways, so you know, but it makes me nervous to think that there might have been like, oh, that would have been really cool if you had that in there, and it's just not in there or something, you know. You never know. Anyways, Cocaine Bear, let's find out what the fuck Cocaine Bear is. Let's get into it. Take it away, Mr. B.
In the winter of 1985, a large American black bear was wandering through a forest in Georgia when it saw something strange lying out on the forest floor. Interested, the bear wandered over and began pawing at it and slashing at it, until finally the bear ripped this thing open, and immediately this strange flowery smell filled the air. Less than 10 minutes later, that bear would experience something that literally no other living thing on Earth has ever experienced. And that is just the beginning of one of the strangest stories that's about to take the world by storm, because a major motion picture has been made about this bear that's going to be released in February of 2023. But before we get into
that's why a lot of my workers have been talking about it. That was like 2-3 months ago. I'm interested already to find out what this story is, because like if it was gonna say like no other bear has ever experienced, my first thought was like, I mean, do you know that? But like no other living being, like including humans, experience. Pretty sure a lot of humans have experienced crazy cocaine binges, so so there must be like, what is it that no one else has experienced? Because pretty sure. But just imagine a territorial bear hopped up on coke that then goes to someplace where humans are. Sounds like a crazy fucking story.
into this totally bizarre story. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button a ham and cheese sandwich, but don't unwrap the cheese slices. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Okay. The bear, the plane, and the duffel? What?
In early December of 1985, in the Chattahoochee National Forest in northern Georgia, a hunter was very carefully making his way through the trees trying to track a deer. Now, this hunter had been tracking this deer for over a mile, but it had been a while since he had seen any signs of it being anywhere nearby. And as this hunter continued to creep along, he became increasingly aware of how loud each of his steps were, because the ground all around him was covered in dry leaves, and so every step he was taking was creating a loud crunching sound. And so eventually this hunter just came to a stop and decided stalking this deer was totally pointless because he was basically scaring it away with these crunching sounds as he got closer to it. But before this hunter was ready to just give up and head back to his vehicle, he continued on a little bit further, and when he pushed through this particularly dense brush area, he saw this clearing up ahead. And the second he saw what was in this clearing, he froze, took a step back into the brush, and then ducked down behind a rock. Because in that clearing, he saw an animal, and it wasn't a deer. It was a huge American black bear. Now, generally speaking, American black bears are not aggressive towards humans. However,
I mean, make them feel like you're either threatening their territory or their family. They're young. That'll change real fucking fast. But just the thought and the validity of this statement, he realized going any further to try to stalk this deer was completely useless because he was making way too much noise and any animal would be able to hear him that he was hunting. So let me go a little bit further. It's like, this won't work, but let me keep trying. I don't... Alright, man. like, if you end up getting injured and or attacked during this situation, like, you really only have yourself to motherfucking blame. But, I mean, you at least got to experience the glory of cocaine bear. So.
If, for example, you were to accidentally sneak up on a black bear, like this hunter had done, and you suddenly startled it by just showing your presence, the bear might react by pouncing on you and ripping you to bits. And so this hunter, with his back pressed up against the rock and his rifle gripped tightly across his chest, he's thinking about that and wondering what he's going to do to get out of this situation. At first he thought, okay, I'll just stand up and quietly walk away. But then he remembered how loud the leaves were, and even though he had been lucky walking in, he hadn't alerted the bear to his presence, on the way out, he was worried he wouldn't be so lucky, that those leaves would alert the bear to his position. And so the hunter began thinking, okay, well, what if I just stand up and start shooting at this bear? But the hunter knew the big issue with that plan is he had a deer hunting rifle, which is not nearly powerful enough to quickly take down a black bear, if at all. And so if he starts shooting at this bear, there was a very good chance that the bear would just turn around and maul him before he was able to put the bear down with his rifle. And so as this hunter is going through these scenarios behind the rock, he realizes something. He hasn't heard this bear at all. Now, bears in general are very loud animals. Just their regular breathing is so guttural and noisy that you can hear it a pretty good distance away. And the hunter's thinking to himself, I can't hear it breathing, and come to think of it, I haven't heard this bear once since I've been near it. And so the hunter very carefully stood up from behind his rock and turned around, and then he kind of peered forward into the brush, looking back into this clearing, and when he spotted the bear again, he realized immediately the bear was dead. The bear was kind of slumped forward, and its body almost looked like a deflated balloon. The hunter was so relieved, he almost started laughing, and so he stepped out from behind his rock, and he made his way through the brush into the clearing to get a better look at this bear. And
if you get that lucky, that's just like, oh cool, I don't have to worry about, I think the bear's dead. You leave. You you don't like, let me roll the dice twice. Maybe it's not dead. You don't. You just like you don't. You walk away. You'd be like, okay, I'm gonna walk backwards. Okay, it's still not moving. I'm gonna keep going. You don't be like, let me poke it with a stick. Is it really dead? Let me find out. What happened to it? Because if the bear is dead and something killed it, you know, it wasn't just natural causes, old bear age. Then if something killed it, like, what are the chances of you killing that something? Something strong enough to kill a bear in 1v1 combat, or maybe a herd of things, like some kind of pack hunting tactic or some shit. Like, you take that W and you get the fuck out. Let me go check it out.
And when the hunter was right over the top of this bear looking down at it, something immediately struck him as very odd. This bear was far too young to have died of natural causes. However, after this hunter kind of poked and prodded the bear and lifted it up on either side to try to look underneath it, he couldn't see any visible injuries. It was like this bear had just randomly dropped dead. But the hunter didn't spend much time thinking about what happened to this bear. Instead, he thought to himself, you know, there has to be some sort of logical explanation for what killed it, and with one last look at the bear on the ground, the hunter turned around and began the long walk back through the woods back to his vehicle. It would turn out there was an explanation for what happened to that bear. However, it was anything but logical. But to get to that non-logical explanation, we first have to go back in time.
Okay. I was just waiting for, like, the bear just all of a sudden, boom, open its eyes and be like, cocaine, and just start fucking ripping his fucking face off or something. I was like, dude got lucky. Hopefully. That's where that ends for that hunter.
Around 11:30 p.m. on September 10th, 1985, so 3 months before the hunter discovered this dead bear, two pilots were flying their little 6-seater Cessna airplane over northern Georgia, making their way north towards Tennessee. And as these pilots flew along very casually, they suddenly intercepted over their radio a voice message that they definitely were not supposed to hear. It sounded like other pilots communicating with each other, and what they were talking about was how they were now going to follow this little Cessna airplane that they could see that was currently flying over northern Georgia.
Oh,
now, radio traffic like this can only really be intercepted if your radio that's doing the intercepting is physically close to the person doing the transmitting. And so knowing this, the two pilots in this little Cessna knew that whoever was talking about following that little Cessna, they had to be talking about them, the two pilots in that Cessna. Now, for most pilots, if you suddenly overheard a radio transmission that your plane was getting followed by some other pilots, you might reach out to those pilots and say, hey, why are you following me? What's going on? Now, the co-pilot of this little Cessna might have wanted to react that way. However, before he could, the main pilot stopped him and said, I actually know exactly why somebody might want to tail us, and unfortunately, we're both going to have to jump out of this plane. Before the co-pilot could really even react to this news, the main pilot had set the Cessna on autopilot, which
Oh my god. The only thing that's playing in my head right now is Kilos in My Bag by Stitches. Talking about, I fly with drugs whenever I want. I can fly drugs right to your city if you want. That's the only thing that's going in my head. I know what they're following with. Cocaine! Oh my god, that's fucking hilarious. Like, we're gonna have to jump. Like, excuse me?
which sets the plane to fly in a straight direction, going at a constant speed, at a constant altitude, until either a pilot comes back and takes the craft back over, or if it just stays on autopilot, it eventually will run out of fuel and crash or run into something. And so after the main pilot had done that, he turned to the co-pilot and gestured for him to come with him into the main cabin of the aircraft, basically the main body of the craft where all their luggage was. And the co-pilot, he's so confused about what's happening, he's so panicked that he just follows the main pilot. So the two of them, they climb back over the two front seats, they go into the main body of the craft, and the main pilot begins strapping parachutes onto some of their luggage. And as he's doing this, he tells the co-pilot to open up the side door of the plane. And so again, the co-pilot is just so caught off guard, he has no idea how to handle this, and so he reaches over and he slides open this door of this moving plane. And as soon as he did, this huge rush of cold night air blasted inside of the cabin, and it became so loud from the howling wind coming in that the two pilots couldn't even talk to each other. And then the main pilot just began pushing the luggage out of the plane just into the night, falling straight down to the ground far, far below them. And at some point, the co-pilot just joined him and began pushing the luggage out of the plane. Wow. And then after all the luggage was out, the main pilot shoved a parachute into the hands of the co-pilot and said, you know, put it on. He had to gesture for it because they couldn't hear each other. And so as this co-pilot's struggling to get on his parachute, the main pilot puts on his chute, and then right after the co-pilot has just barely got his parachute on, the main pilot pushes him out the side of the plane, and then the main pilot jumps out after him. So they basically abandoned their plane, which was still set to autopilot, so at some point, it was just going to crash. About 5 hours later, in a suburb of Knoxville, Tennessee, an 85-year-old man named Fred Myers was just waking up.
Excuse
Fred
me?
always got up before...
Excuse me? The Fred Myers? Is that the Fred Myers? No fucking way, man. What? Excuse me?
Sunrise. It was part of his daily routine. He would wake up, he would get dressed, he would wash and shave his face, and then he would sit down and read the local newspaper.
And then he'd go to his Kroger stores and, you know, make sure that they're all working as they should.
This simple routine was actually very important to Fred because recently he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, which is a progressive disease that destroys memory. And so having this sort of set routine helped him manage his symptoms. Basically, at least in the morning, he could go into autopilot and go through this routine and not get confused. However, on this particular morning, something would happen that would leave Fred more confused than he had ever been in his entire life. Fred had made it to his bathroom, he had washed his face, and he had begun shaving when out of the corner of his eye, he noticed something strange outside in his driveway. He could see it through a nearby window, but it was still so dark outside, Fred couldn't tell what this thing was out there. And so feeling very curious, Fred put his razor blade down and he made his way over to the window to get a better look. And when he reached the window and looked out at his driveway and saw what this strange thing was, he could not believe his eyes. There was this huge parachute out on his driveway, and on the parachute was the main pilot of the Cessna. After the main pilot had pushed the co-pilot out and leapt out himself, when he pulled his ripcord, his chute either didn't deploy, or when it deployed, it didn't inflate fully, and so he was forced to go to his reserve chute, but it didn't inflate fast enough to stop him from crashing into the ground. And so the main pilot slammed into the ground, basically at terminal velocity.
No, not basically. Completely. First off, that just makes people afraid to skydive in general. Sometimes chutes just don't work. But also, can you imagine? Can you imagine? You just go outside, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to work, and just in your front lawn is a parachute and someone face down in a fucking flight attire, just dead, splattered on the floor, just like, you just keep going. It's just like, that's what, I don't know, that's one of those situations I feel like I would just stop and be like, huh, I should probably call someone about this. Just probably call 911 and be like, hey, there's like a dead pilot on my front lawn. You guys should probably come out here and do something about it. I'm going to work. You could find me there if you need any questioning, but that's like, you now know as much as I do. Like, how do you explain that one? I feel like that's one of those such a bizarre situations that all you can do is like, huh, you know, you don't see that every day. Oh well. Anyways.
And so he sustained catastrophic internal injuries, and he died within a couple of minutes of hitting the ground. Fred was so stunned and confused at what he was looking at that without saying a word, he just turned away from his window and walked over to his phone and called the police, shaving cream still on his face. When the police arrived at Fred's house that morning, they were expecting to see a dead recreational skydiver on Fred's property. But when they walked up the driveway and saw the dead man for themselves, they knew right away this was not some recreational skydiver. He actually looked more like a soldier. He was wearing a bulletproof vest over some camouflage fatigues, and he had night vision goggles strapped to his head. But the dead man's shoe choice made the police think this guy could not possibly have been military, because on this guy's feet were not military-style combat boots like you would expect with the rest of his getup. Instead, he was wearing loafers, specifically Gucci loafers, so very expensive.
Them Gucci loafs, dog? Okay. Okay. It was like croc skin and everything.
Of designer shoes. And so the police are thinking to themselves, who the heck was this guy and what was he doing? The police would figure that out.
Question.
However, first, we have to fast forward 2 months to late
Man, this story's time traveling, man.
November 1985, so roughly 2 weeks before that bear was discovered by that hunter in Chattahoochee National Forest. Now, at this point in late November, that black bear was alive and well and living a typical black bear life in the Chattahoochee National Forest, which meant he mostly spent his time wandering around the woods looking for something to eat. And on this particular day in November, the bear was doing just that when out of the corner of his eye, he spotted something strange lying on the forest floor. It was one of the pieces of luggage that the two pilots had pushed out of their plane. It was this big, heavy duffel bag. Now, the bear had no idea if this duffel bag contained food, but the bear was optimistic, so it meandered its way over and began pawing at the bag with its massive claws.
Oh, it's gonna cut into not only the bag, but the bag inside the bag.
And pretty much immediately, his claws tore open a hole in this bag. And suddenly, the air all around this bear was filled with this glorious flowery smell. So the bear put its nose directly into this rip in the bag and began sniffing and licking the contents of this bag.
Oh my god, that bear's gonna be so fucking high.
And apparently, the bear just loved it because it ate whatever was inside of the bag, all of it. And when he was done, the bear felt so good, he was so full of energy that he just started sprinting in a straight direction. And after running at top speed about 100 yards, every major system inside of this bear shut down all at once, and he died on the spot, collapsing in that clearing.
Huh. I mean, that makes sense, dude. That's a system that's usually has never processed a drug, and that much of it in a short span would probably even stop a human's heart. So I'm just glad that it didn't get super coked up and then go to, like, I don't know, a party in the park or something and just start tearing shit up. Just totally, like, losing its mind, eyes all big, just like, rah! And just, like, fucking shit up left and right. That would have been a crazy fucking story. But this is totally bizarre. That poor bear just was living its best bear life and got totally coked up and just died on the spot. Just went to run its heart out and literally ran its heart out.
And then, about 2 weeks later, that hunter walked into the Chattahoochee National Forest and discovered this dead bear. And then, within 24 hours, the hunter was back home, and he told one of his friends about discovering this dead bear. And when he told his friend about seeing this bear, he also kind of casually mentioned that he had seen a duffel bag in the forest not far from this dead bear. Now, to understand what this friend did next, you need some context. By this point in time, the police had actually figured out a lot about that dead man on Fred Myers' driveway, the
Hearing the full name. Oh my God.
main pilot of the Cessna. They knew he was a 40-year-old man named Andrew Thornton.
Where have I seen this picture before? Was this the original picture maybe that they had on the thumbnail, then you switched it or something? I've seen this guy's face before.
Who had served in the U.S. Army as a paratrooper, but after getting out of the service, he had kind of gone astray in his life and become a big-time smuggler of illegal goods. The police had also figured out by this point that Andrew, along with a co-pilot, had been the people flying that Cessna that eventually was found crashed into a mountainside in North Carolina. Sure. The co-pilot had survived the jump out of the Cessna, and so the police tracked him down, and they very quickly realized this co-pilot was really just a victim of Andrew. Andrew had told this guy they were just going to fly to the Bahamas for a vacation. And so when that plan completely evaporated, and suddenly Andrew is barking orders at this guy to open up the plane and push the luggage out and jump out, the co-pilot said he just totally panicked and just started doing whatever Andrew wanted. And so this guy was just totally terrified, and really all he could offer police was just to confirm that, yup, Andrew was the main pilot, and yes, we really did push his luggage out of the side of the plane over some forest in northern Georgia. The police believed the co-pilot and did not charge him with any crime. The police would go and search all over northern Georgia, and they would find the majority of the missing bags. However, they knew they were still missing some, and they knew they really needed to recover them. And so, around the time that this hunter is telling his friend about this bear encounter and this duffel bag, the police were constantly having news outlets tell people in northern Georgia that if you see one of these duffel bags attached to a big parachute or something, please come forward and tell us. We are looking for these. And so the hunter's friend thought, you know what, that duffel bag he mentioned out in Chattahoochee National Forest, which is in northern Georgia, might be one of those bags. And so the friend called authorities. Authorities were thrilled to get this tip, and so they charged out to the Chattahoochee National Forest, and they made their way out to where this dead bear was, and then sure enough, about 100 yards away from this bear was this bag, and it was one of the bags they were missing. Except the bag was empty, because, as we already know, that black bear had eaten everything inside.
That bear did not run very far. Black bears can move at pretty good speeds. So others, they were like, yeah, he's immediately fucking dead, which, I mean, again, not surprising.
Side of this bag. And as you might have guessed, that bag, along with every other bag that had been cast out of the Cessna that night, was full of cocaine. Because Andrew was a
Andrew got kilos in his bag, dawg.
Drug smuggler. And on the night he and his co-pilot leapt from the Cessna, he was trying to smuggle 900 pounds of cocaine.
Okay, I guess he doesn't have kilos. He's close, though. 408 kilograms. Oh, no, he's got kilos. Sorry, I was doing American fucking standard metrics there. Yeah, no. He's got a couple keys. No, not many, but a couple keys. Yeah, okay.
From South America into the United States. That transmission that Andrew and the co-pilot suddenly overheard on their radio as they were cruising along in their Cessna was the sound of federal agents within the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency who had been tipped off about Andrew's big drug run, and so they really had sent 2 planes to go follow him and potentially intercept him. And so the authorities standing in the Chattahoochee National Forest looking down at this empty duffel bag had no idea where the cocaine went that was supposed to be inside of it. But on a hunch, they decided to bring the body of the dead black bear back with them and
just a hunch. It's like, suspicious.
Perform an autopsy on it. And sure enough, during this autopsy, the medical examiner would open up the bear's stomach, and the examiner would say the stomach was, quote, packed to the brim with cocaine.
Like, that is very sad and tragic for this bear. But, like, that doesn't happen every day. And that is dark, but hilarious. I feel so bad for that bear. It was just living its best bear life. And then it got fucked up on cocaine. Like, I'm surprised that the stomach didn't, like, rupture or something. Or melt or something with that much active drugs in it. But, like, fuck, dude.
Thus ending the mystery of how this bear died. It died from a massive, massive cocaine overdose. But the bear's story did not end there. Normally, after an animal is autopsied, they are cremated. But for some reason, this medical examiner decided not to do that, and instead, he had the bear taxidermied, and then he gifted this taxidermied bear to the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area. And then from there, the bear changed hands many times. Over the next 2 decades, no one knows exactly who had the bear and for what reason, but there were reports that at least at one point it was stolen from a storage facility, and then it was sold at a pawn shop, and then at some point the bear was in the possession of famous country singer Waylon Jennings, and then finally the bear found its forever home. Today, the bear is on display at the Kentucky Fun Mall in Lexington, Kentucky, and around its neck is a placard that reads, Cocaine Bear.
Here sits, I mean, it's not really sitting, Pablo Escobar. It's the greatest name ever. It's really kind of a, like, it's fucked up because it's really kind of a, not, I don't know if disgrace is the right word, but for back a better term, disgrace to the bear's life, and the tragicness that happened to it. But that name, Pablo Escobar, instead of Pablo Escobar, is hilarious. But the hat is a little bit overkill, like this like Kentucky pimp hat, like that's kind of fucked up. Here's his Cocaine Bear in 1985. It was 85. Oh, Cocaine Bear was found dead in the Coochie National Forest. He overdosed on 40 kilos. It said 4. Did it say 4? It sounds like it said 4. Was it 400? If it was 400 grams, 4 kilos. I'm pretty sure it said 4 kilos. Anyways, maybe I'm just doing the math wrong. 40 kilos of cocaine dropped by Andrew Thornton. You might remember Andrew from the Bluegrass Conspiracy. Don't do drugs or you'll end up dead and maybe stuffed like poor Cocaine Bear. It is a little poor, so why you're presenting it as such is with a chain and pimp hat and everything is a little, I would say, poor taste. Plus the slang, the nickname Pablo Escobar. I can't say that without laughing. I'd say it's a little much. It's a little disrespectful, but yeah.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's
Pablo Escobar, that's fucking hilarious. I got something here for a video. I don't do this very often, but occasionally when I'm doing a video, I will get a subscriber, and this subscriber even left a message on the Mr. Ballen story. It's relevant that I just recently released yesterday, which is the world's worst babysitter, which it was weird because it leaves me thinking like it's so random which Mr. Ballen videos get a lot of views and which don't. Some I'll upload and they get like 300, 400, 500 in like 48 hours, and some I'll release and they get maybe 20 in like a week. It's very sporadic which ones are like super sought after and which ones are not, which is odd. This one didn't get as much rep as I thought it was going to. But Mr. Dwight VA, appreciate you, Dwight, for the sub. Thank you very much. Hi, 3 eyes. Rage, this was awesome, bro. I'm new sub to your channel. I noticed. I just saw that. I do love Mr. Ballen. Are you taking reaction requests by chance? Maybe. It depends what you're asking for. If it's Mr. Ballen, I'll get to all of them eventually. Like, I don't see myself ever stopping with these until I've watched them all, because Mr. Ballen is a G. But if it's other reactions, maybe I might get to him. If it's Mr. B's the only reactions that I do that's not music. That maybe that'll change or whatnot. I don't do like television or movies and stuff. I thought about it, but like I don't know, cause like I don't know. Since I don't do this for money, I could. I mean, they would probably block it. I would imagine that would be a hard one to fight off the block and whatnot. But I could actually do the entirety of a TV show, not just like if a TV show's 15, 20 minutes, not like 8 to 10 minutes of the entire show and stuff like that. But I don't know. But anyways, I don't watch TV that much. But and plus, if I was watching it, there would be a lot of pausing and talking for a very long period of time, I would imagine. But yes, I usually only do music. This is a rare exception to that. And occasional, I did do a trailer review once. But that's because I was so disgusted by the Artemis Fowl movie, and still am, that I had to do it. Anyways, this was a fucking insane story. I thought it was going to get crazier. I thought it was going to get crazier, but that was definitely crazy. Like, he wasn't wrong. It was insane. I thought it was going to get crazier, but that was definitely insane. We gotta jump. Yes, sir, we gotta jump. We gotta push this cocaine out and jump. Dude had duffels of cocaine, man. It's crazy. I'm pretty sure it said pretty sure he said that it was like 4 kilos, not 40 kilos, you know what I mean? But like, again, I could be wrong. Okay, what's this one? Oh, okay, you can go back down now.
He and his co-pilot.
I think that's it. Oh no, I'm gonna just mute it while we're out from here. But yeah, no, that is definitely. Oh no, okay. No, he was right. 408 kilograms. So wouldn't it be 400 kilograms? Yeah, probably had. Yeah, he had 408 kilograms total. That's a lot of kilos. Holy shit! Because I saw it as I thought I saw a decimal there. I thought it was 4.08 kilograms. So I thought it was only 4 kilograms. So my bad on that one. My eyes didn't work in that moment apparently. Yes, and there was specifically around 40 kilograms in that bag. That's a lot of drugs. That is a lot of cocaine. Like, I don't know much about doing cocaine, but from my time in Drug Dealer Simulator, people usually order stuff in like grams. Usually not a whole lot of kilo orders unless you're like that's a lot of money. So unless you're like in like a cartel or like, you know, a supplier or something, you're probably not ordering kilos and kilos of cocaine. If you just maybe if you're a rock star, maybe you do or something. But like, I imagine it takes a long time to get through a kilo of cocaine. Like, I mean, a long time is at least weeks, I would guess. I don't know. I've never done drugs. To do 40 kilos in minutes. Yeah, that'll kill you fast. That'll kill you instantly. You get this rush and you're just like, you start fucking running and you think you're running for like a year, but you actually ran like 5 feet and then you just die. So sad, man. But god damn, that's a fucking hilarious story. Pablo Escobar. Sorry, Escobar. That is great. And even the Kroger man himself, Fred Myers, was a part of that story. That's crazy. Yeah, man, that story went places. That story really went places. That's great. So next on the way up, we had the gruesome crime caught on camera. Interested to find out what that gruesome crime is. On the way down, we still have, if I go down or not, we do have the experience the worst medical screw up ever. So one of those two is going to be next. I imagine we're going to keep going up for a little bit. I kind of want to get through some of these newer ones because they really look fascinating. I definitely want to get through the legal forest, the Bell witch haunting, and the entire village dropped dead overnight. Those sound very fascinating, and I would love to find out what those are. So maybe once we get through those ones, maybe then we'll start going back down. So I imagine the gruesome crime will be next. So thank you very much for joining me here today, and I will see you all next time.